There's a certain character archetype that you would find in lots of animated films, TV shows, and in some video games that I find myself enjoying quite often on a more personal level. This character archetype is the depiction of robots and skeletal figures in any medium, and for some reason I feel I enjoy them more often than any other characters. And it all starts with having to do with their There's a gradient I feel that best describes the types of robots that I feel most connected to, and from what you can see, the gradient judges from larger human attributes to machine. On the left, you can't get more regular machine, like a washing machine or a toaster. You don't see many robots designed like this, but the ones you do see, there's not a lot to get attached to. There's nothing to grab me aside from a few lights and different sounds, nothing that I enjoy in robot characters.
Halt.
On the other side, we see characters who are so far from appearing robotic, there's no aspect I can enjoy about them being robots. I'll get to it later, but for now you can see that aside from a few slight changes throughout different segments, these characters lack attributes I enjoy in other robot characters. Just humans 2.0. Finally, we meet the middle of the gradient, the real cream of the crop, the meat and potatoes, the very reason I made this video in the first place. There are very specific design choices made in these designs and actions that I feel I enjoy so much, starting with It sounds silly, but there's a certain science to design robot and skeletal movement. Characters like the Iron Giant move with lumbering steps, and who grab and hold things much different because they lack proper nerves to distinguish touch. This also applies to skeletal characters and their movements. Being that they lack humanity to this extent makes them interesting to watch move and interact with other things around them. They lack the humanity to understand touch, so they are often careful with organic creatures and materials. This sense of disconnect can be found in cyborg characters as well, which I also very much enjoy watching. Characters like Long John Silver from Treasure Planet and Cyborg from Teen Titans are also characters I often enjoy the most as well, though part of that can be their design as well thought out characters as well.
You saying this is my fault?
Want me to say it again?
Billy Bones?
Bones? Bones? Can't ring any bells. Must have been a different cyborg. There's a slew of cyborgs roaming this part.
Silver's entire right arm, leg, and eye are robotic, and as such, they carry a lumbering effect whenever he moves, and despite most of him being organic, his robot parts are always fun to watch.
Now don't be too put off by this hunk of hardware.
Unfortunately, in film and TV, there aren't as many skeletal characters, but the ones there are, it's clear to see in their movement there is an inherent lack of control, meaning their movements are often clumsy, and because of that previously mentioned lack of humanity, it's not something they can control.
Skeletons don't walk like that.
It's how you walk.
No, I don't. Stop it!
In most cartoons and films, this makes them fun to watch move and interact with their environment.
Oh, that's it. Ah, okay. Oh yeah. Come on, boys, pick it up. Yeah. Like it. Okay, Chelsea, take it.
An element you only ever find in robot and skeletal characters is that in often cases, they may fall apart or break and need to be fixed, put back together, or repaired. It's an aspect you only really find in these kinds of characters, and I find myself enjoying watching this process or act performed on screen. The Iron Giant is able to repair himself with little effort. Skeletons often have very few things keeping them together in the first place, so them falling apart is inevitable. And seeing John Silver need to do maintenance on his own parts periodically is an interesting character detail. Finally, a character like E102 Gamma is a whole different story for me. However, he still fits the criteria I have for my enjoyment of these characters. His movements are robotic, and despite not having a mouth, his arc throughout Sonic Adventure, we can find the small pieces of humanity in the ways that he tries to help that which he sees is worth saving. Leading me to my next reason. Voice does not only apply to how these characters sound, but also the unique perspective they can have. Skeletons, being that they are beings existing beyond mortal limitations, leaves them to be characters who can give wisdom only they can attain, knowledge mostly pertaining to the human condition, and even knowledge of a greater power. King Solomon from Sonic and the Secret Rings is a character somewhat able to have a greater understanding of life and death and even mortal clocks.
A great curse has been placed upon you. I can see in your eyes the grim fate that awaits you.
Hey, quit staring! You're giving me the creeps!
I sense death approaching.
The skeletons from the Corpse Bride have comical commentary on the world around them based on their past knowledge of the world. Sans and Papyrus from Undertale clearly know more than they let off, and it's quite clear that Sans knows more about existence and power than Papyrus does. As a matter of fact, I think my favorite skin in Fortnite, yes I play Fortnite, has got to be King Oro. Mostly having to do with that he is a skeletal character, but also because he heavily reminds me of King Solomon in his appearance. And as such, I've dubbed him in my presets as King Solomon, Dark Solomon, and the Golden King, and so on and so forth. Robots can also have the same remarks, but also have a uniquely different perspective to living people and creatures. For example, throughout E102 Gamma's story, he questions why sacrifices and choices are made for others when it does nothing for themselves, ultimately questioning the human condition.
Why try to save that which is useless to you?
The Iron Giant learns that humans are rash and use weapons to take that which he holds dear, and questions human reasoning and why people do bad things, in stark contrast to Gamma's plight of goodness. And this leads back to the human connection idea from before, and how these characters being so different but also so familiar is so pleasant to see in these characters. In characters like the Guardians from the Castle in the Sky, the Giant, Gamma, and Wally, we see a piece of humanity in which if we are compassionate and caring, we will truly find the most fantastic things in life. The Guardians protect the creatures of this floating oasis for no reason but to protect. The Giant wishes to protect the only friends he's ever known. Wally wants to love simply because he saw it in a film. Gamma wants to break free from Eggman and save his friends because he sees the hurt of doing nothing instead. Only the most relatable and compassionate skeletons have ever wanted to help that which is alive. And Outliers have interesting characters and stand to teach us about ourselves because they pose a simple factor no other kind of characters can have. I love film so very much, and these characters are my very favorite because of all these reasons, and so much more having to do with their mannerisms, details of character design, and overall purpose. Characters like the T-800 Arnold form from Terminator and Sunny from iRobot don't cut it for me because they have so many attributes to them that make them too human, and so there's nothing for me to connect. They already have a general understanding of the world and humans, and we can very much see that. They sometimes don't understand certain choices or forms of speech.
What does this action signify?
But they still understand enough to not have the same effect as other characters for me. Remember the Gradient from before. There's a fantastic comic series you can find online and on Instagram, created by artist Jenny Jinya, and the story depicts different situations with different animals in which death is a common theme in them. The comic is titled Loving Reaper, and shows a different type of Reaper. A Reaper who shows empathy and love for the creatures he allows into his domain. His design isn't too special, but I don't think that's the point. Because the basis of his character is that he lovingly welcomes all creatures to his domain. He understands the purpose of the end, because he is the end. It's an awesome comic series, and I really hope you check it out. For all the reasons I explored and more, I love these types of characters so much because of how they make me feel with their personality.
A tragic tale of romance, passion, and a murder most foul.
Movement. And what they have to teach us about ourselves and what it means to be human.
You give up a few things, chasing a dream.
There's nothing quite like them. Thanks for watching.